Britain is ages away, so why is the Queen on our money? It all started back in 1840, after the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, when Britain decided that we should be an official British colony, even though there weren't many British people here. Then they gave New Zealand a governor, William Hobson, whose two jobs were: 1. Making sure that the Brits who were here were being well behaved and following British laws, and 2. Convincing Māori that they should start following British laws. Hey! Because Britain thought that would be very nice. Then, in 1852, British Parliament passed the New Zealand Constitution Act, which said that settlers could make up their own laws. There was even a bit that said Māori could make up their own laws too, but the settlers all agreed that bit was just impossible to read. So the settlers set up a settler state and soon began to legislate. What I meant to say was that the settlers started passing lots of new laws to give themselves more power and the Māori people less. After a few years of this, Māori put their foot down, and in the second half of the 1800s, a few different kotahitanga movements brought iwi together to try to restore the balance of power Māori and Pākehā had agreed to in Te Tiriti. For example, Waikato iwi noticed that the Brits seemed to bloody love their kings and queens, so they said, "Fine, will you pay attention to us if we do things the British way?" and picked a Māori king of their own to hold their mana and stand up to the British. The Kingitanga movement focused on stopping the flow of land and power from Māori to Pākehā, and they were pretty successful, which made them a big enemy of this guy. That's right, it's George Grey. He's back and he's ready to start an illegal war against the Kingitanga. So he did. And after that, he kept fighting pretty much anyone who stood in the way of the colonising. After the settler government got tired of these expensive wars, they focused on more boring, bureaucratic ways of squashing Māori political power and taking Māori land, which is a horrible sentence that's unfortunately true. One of the laws they passed came to be known as the Validation of Invalid Land Sales Act, and it said that every time the British had taken land in dodgy ways, well, now that was fine, and we weren't going to talk about it anymore. They also passed the Māori Councils Act to take the wind out of the sails of Māori Parliament. That's right, yes, there was a Māori Parliament, because again, Māori were like, please just listen to us. We don't like the colonising. Would it help if we formed one of your parliament things? Because we'll do it. But it didn't help. The settler government refused to acknowledge the Māori Parliament, and instead they insisted that the Māori seats in the settler parliament were the way to go. The main problem with the Māori seats in the settler parliament was that there was only 4 of them, which would have been more understandable if there were only 8 seats altogether, but unfortunately it was more like 80. And some Māori said, OK, fine, we'll participate in your settler government because we don't seem to have a lot of options right now. But then, when one Māori MP, Hone Heke Ngāpua, put forward a bill called the Native Rights Act, the Pākehā MPs didn't even let it get to a vote. They literally just stood up and walked out. I know! The way settlers were running things, Te Tiriti o Waitangi already seemed like a distant relic. New Zealand was becoming an outpost of Mother England ruled over by the Queen.
Get in.
And it felt like there wasn't a lot tangata whenua could do. It's at this point the settler government started turning their attention to the people who weren't in New Zealand yet. And if you pay very close attention, there's a chance you might be able to spot a pattern in who they wanted to come to New Zealand and who they didn't. Settlers from Britain were encouraged to move here. Settlers from other parts of Northern Europe were tolerated. And for almost everyone else, it was either very hard or impossible. For example, Chinese settlers who had been here since the 1860s all of a sudden got singled out to pay a poll tax that no one else had to pay. Also, only Chinese men were allowed in, so you had to leave your whole family behind if you wanted to come here. In fact, Chinese people couldn't become New Zealand citizens until the 1950s. The 1950s! The 1950s! And as for the settler government, well, after a while, we just started calling it the government. And next up, I'm going to tell you how that government